Good morning, everybody. We're live here from the birdhouse. It is the end of August already. It is Saturday, August 26th, and today I'll show you some of the different feather and color abnormalities that you might see, in your yard or hiking that birds have sometimes, because we've been getting a lot of questions about that, which makes sense. It's that time of the year where the young birds are starting to molt their feathers and get more into their adult plumage. Other birds are shedding some of their feathers and getting some new ones in order to make their migration down south. So with that happening, sometimes you get a little bit of weird coloration or birds that look a little off. So I'll show you some examples of that. And as always, we love to know who's on, so you can say hi in the comments, or if you have any questions, you can put those in there too. And we love to know what kind of things you're seeing, so throw those in the comments as well, especially if you are still getting those hummingbirds or orioles. We've been getting a lot of reports, especially about hummingbirds. So let's get started. Yeah, hummingbirds. So people are reporting probably more hummingbirds now than I've heard all year round, of all year long. Early in the spring, they were kind of slow to come to feeders. People were kind of hit or miss with them. But right now, as they're gearing up for their migration south, or we're getting some that are migrating through the area at the moment, they're fueling up a lot, and that requires a lot of calories, which they get not only from the plants, the nectar producing plants, but they'll also come to hummingbird feeders. So if you put your hummingbird feeders away because you weren't getting any hummingbirds, you might want to think about putting them out for a few more weeks. Putting the feeder out isn't going to keep them from migrating or anything like that. It can just give them some of the extra calories that they need to make that migration. So if you're seeing more hummingbirds, you're not alone. We've been hearing that from a lot of people. Same with Orioles. They seem to be fizzling a little bit this week, but some people are getting big groups of Orioles coming through their yards when they haven't seen them in a couple weeks. So same kind of idea. They are going back down south, unfortunately. It is around that time of the year, and they need to fuel up too. So they are drinking nectar. They do eat the oranges, but what they really seem to be coming to now are the jelly, the grape jelly or the birdberry jelly, and the mealworms. So something to consider to keep out in your yard if you are seeing a few of these birds pass through. You might want to give them a little bit of a boost with some of those foods. But you might see a lot of this out there too, because as those young birds leave the nest, they tend to hop around on the ground for quite a while until they start to molt, like this little robin here, and get their adult plumage. And when that happens, sometimes things look a little off for the birds. Like this is your typical kind of baby bird. As it's molting, it looks a little raggedy, and its feathers look stumpy. They haven't grown in all the way yet. But there's some different abnormalities. We'll start to see goldfinches, for example, that the young goldfinches are kind of out in the world right now, and they'll start to molt as well, because the goldfinches will actually molt twice fully in a year, which is pretty uncommon. Most songbirds only do one full molt before the spring, but goldfinches will do it twice. So they're going to start turning that more drab olive color that they'll stay all winter long. So you might see this in your yard also. This is a common kind of look as that goldfinch molts back into its more drab plumage. But this is something common you might see in your backyards are cardinals without the crest. Like it looks like they're almost losing some of their feathers in the top of their head. This is really, really common. Not only do they sometimes not have the crest, but sometimes they will be completely bald like this here. And this is well known to happen not only in cardinals, but in blue jays also. Usually I see between home and the feeders we have at the store, usually we see about one bird a year that has either a full bald head like these guys, or it's missing a significant amount of feathers on its head. And that doesn't mean that the bird is sick necessarily. Sometimes lack of feathers like this could be due to things like feather mites, but a lot of the times they are just shedding all of their feathers, molting all their feathers on their head all at once. So it looks really, really strange. but it is totally normal and not super uncommon. So they're not sick or anything like that. You don't have to worry. And after about 2-3 weeks or so, you should start to see those feathers coming back on their heads. So they can look really, really strange during this time, especially cardinals and blue jays are both known to do this. But it's totally fine. You don't have to worry about the bird being sick or anything like that. It just looks a little jarring. They almost look like miniature vultures. So this is something you might see in your yard. And then there's different color abnormalities, which aren't going to be as common as the feather abnormalities, at least with the reports we get. One thing that you're probably familiar with is being albino or albinism. Here's an example of a robin that has that. It's completely white, no pigments. It doesn't have any color on it at all. Even its eye is bright, bright red. So this is a true albino bird, and usually albinos do not live very long due to their color. They're very open and susceptible to predation, but usually there's something off with their genetics which causes them to be sick, more sickly, and don't last very long. That being said, there are different color variations that have white pigments or lack of pigments that make the bird white, that you are more likely to see. So you're not super likely to see a fully albino bird, but you're likely to see something like this. This is called a leucistic bird, or having some kind of leucism, and it's just patches that are lacking pigments. So sometimes this happens just during one molt. Sometimes the bird will just show this every time they molt, but usually it's just within one molt. So you'll see them like this for a while, and then the next time they molt their feathers, they'll be back to normal, if you will. So the reason for this is a lack of pigment in the actual feathers. So this is called being leucistic, when they have white patches like this. Here's another example of a leucistic cardinal. Much, much more white, but you can see it's not an albino because it does have that dark eye, and it does still have some coloration to it. So some leucistic birds. Here's a red-breasted nuthatch that's also exhibiting some leucism. So interesting color variation that you might see. Now, the opposite of that, you might see a very dark colored bird, like this green heron here, and that's called being melanistic. So they have more pigments. They have darker pigments than usual. So if you see a bird that has a much darker pattern or is all around very, very dark, that's called being melanistic. And here's an example of, you've got your typical house sparrow here on the left, but then a melanistic house sparrow on the right. Same with, here's a house finch on the left, and then also a northern flicker on the right, both with some melanism there. So that's when they are dark in color. It's called being melanistic. And one example, it's not a bird at all, but a fine example of a melanistic animal would be black squirrels, which are found around here and there in patches, or in Toronto. They're well known up in there. These are actually gray squirrels, but they're exhibiting melanism, and they're melanistic squirrels. So it tends to go in groups, and if you've got a whole bunch of melanistic squirrels, the population tends to grow. So you might happen upon some melanistic squirrels because they are definitely around. And then there's other types of color variations you might get. Now this is called xanthochromism. This is a yellow cardinal. So this is a cardinal that's not exhibiting its red color normal, like most cardinals do. So what's happening here is that this bird is lacking the enzyme that will make the feathers red. So they're just lacking that, and because of that, they don't exhibit any red in their feathers, but instead they are yellow. So this is not a very common occurrence. That being said, there was a cardinal like this seen in Syracuse about a year ago, maybe not even that long ago. There's one in Alabama several years ago that a lot of people got to see. So it does happen here and there, just not really that common. And here's an example of a red-bellied woodpecker. Same kind of thing. You can see normally where it would have those bright red patches, they are yellow. So something different. And then this one is kind of totally different, but it's definitely a color variation. It's also a kind of genetic variation. This is a cardinal that's half male and half female, and it's caused by an abnormality during their cell division. It's something called gyngeromorphism, when they exhibit both male and female traits. So this is something kind of totally different, but it's a different color variation. So half male, half female cardinal. Every once in a while, these guys show up too. Again, not very common at all, but you never know what you might see out there, especially if you've got a lot of birds coming to your feeders. So that was a little show just about some of the different things you might see in your yard, especially as these birds are molting their feathers. And it looks like we've got a few people on here. If you've got comments or questions, go ahead and put those in there. Randy is on, and he says, good morning, Liz and everybody. Bob is on. Good morning, Bob. He says, I have a bald blue jay hanging out at the feeder. All right, so Bob has a bald blue jay, so it's that time of the year. Very timely. Stephanie says, I get squirrels with a lot of white coloring. Interesting. So Stephanie's got some squirrels that are leucistic, some lack of pigments there. And let's see, Cammie says, good morning. I was thinking about putting away my Oriole feeder. Not sure. Well, it's up to you. It's about that time where they're starting to fizzle out. But that being said, some people are getting them in pretty big numbers every day. So if you haven't seen any in a couple of weeks, might be time to take down the feeders. It doesn't hurt anything by keeping them up. So if you're not sure if you're getting them or not, you can always keep the feeders up. It doesn't cause them not to migrate. It won't harm them in any way. So it's really up to you. If you haven't seen any in a while and you're constantly changing the feeder and cleaning the feeder and it's becoming quite a chore without any reward, I would take it down. But we recommend if you see them, if you're still seeing them, to keep that feeder up. Let's see, Ed is on. It says, on a ride home, there was a roadkill deer off to the side in the grass, and there were 12 turkey vultures working on the carcass. It looked like a scene out of the African savannah. Good to see that poor deer was not going to waste. A circle of life moment. Yes. The turkey vultures, speaking of bald birds, are well-known decomposers. So that sounds like perfect for them, a deer carcass. And let's see, Stephanie is on, says, I was wondering if unused nectar defender can be saved until spring. So yes, she's talking about, we sell little bottles of liquid called Nectar Defender, and it's just all natural enzymes. You add a little bit to your hummingbird nectar, and it keeps it fresh longer. So normally the nectar will go bad between 2 or 4 days, depending on where you have it and the time of the year and everything. But the Nectar Defender will keep it fresh for more like a week or 10 days. And yes, you can save it until spring. It doesn't go bad. I just keep mine in the pantry with my containers of hummingbird nectar. And yeah, it'll be totally fine until spring. You can absolutely save it. Let's see, Bob says, also saw a double-crested cormorant flying overhead this morning. Cool to see. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of them around the river, too. It looks like they're also making their way down south. Some of them are here all winter, though. You can find them here in the winter. But there seems to be a lot that are passing through. So really cool sightings. And it looks like that is everybody's comments and questions for the day. So we will be back on Tuesday with another broadcast. If you're in the Rochester area, we are having our jigsaw puzzle swap all weekend long. You can bring your old puzzles and swap them out for some that are brand new to you. We have a huge selection that's available. We've had so many people drop them off. You can see kind of a preview of that on our Facebook page or Instagram page. They just posted a video of those. And then we've got our photo contest going on too. So if you have taken any photos, you can submit them into our photo contest. It is in person, 8x10 photos. We've got all the information for that on our website, which is thebirdhouseny.com. com. If you go to our events page, you can get all the information. We've got a whole bunch of different categories, including a youth category, including a pet category if you don't get outdoors too much. So we've got something for everybody there, and we do give away prizes for that. So that's going on now, and will continue to go on for a couple more weeks. So make sure to submit your photos to the photo contest. And that is everything we have for you today, and we will see you on Tuesday. Until then, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.